Hello, I'm Len Nasman. I've been a PaintShop Pro user since the JASC days, long before Corel took over the program. And hardly a day goes by without me opening PaintShop Pro and taking advantage of its many capabilities. For example, I do quite a bit of digital photography, and I'm always calling up PaintShop Pro to crop, modify, and resize my photographs. Here you see a small part of the collection of photographs I've resized to 1920 by 1080, which is a standard resolution for HD videos. And here where I live at Bristol Village, residents are frequently calling on me to create signs for them. With a few clicks of the mouse button, I can use PaintShop Pro to create signs for my friends who are running the arts and crafts show, or working in the computer room, or whatever. I also do quite a bit of tutorial writing, and I use LibreOffice Writer to create my tutorial documents, but I use PaintShop Pro to do things like create this banner, little schoolhouse inserts, and capture graphics from the internet, modify them in PaintShop, and then insert them into a document. I also create websites, and again, PaintShop Pro is a very useful tool. Here I created a banner, added a couple of little schoolhouse graphics, added some text with a drop shadow created with PaintShop Pro, and then I used the buttonize tool to shade the edges of that banner. And again, I've captured images and inserted them into the web page itself. Even when I'm writing email, I find PaintShop Pro very useful. Sometimes I'll want to insert an image. However, the new digital cameras and smartphones create images that are much too large for emailing. So PaintShop Pro can take a 4,000 pixel wide image from the camera, resize it down to 800 pixels, which is just right for sending as an email. In this demonstration, I'm going to focus primarily on modifying photographs. So let's open up PaintShop Pro 2023 and see what it looks like. When you first start PaintShop, you'll probably start with its welcome screen. And if you don't see the welcome screen, you can click on the little house tool here, and that'll open up the welcome screen. Right now, it's looking at news, and there are places to look at all kinds of things promoted by Corel. We can also go to the store, and there are even some free things we can order to download to add. And if you haven't done so, although I've done so it doesn't appear, the Creative Content Pack is really useful. There are also links to a number of tutorials. Shameless commercial message here. I encourage you to take a look at my tutorials. There are a number of workspaces available. There is a workspace dedicated to photography. There's another workspace that just includes the essentials. This is designed for beginners as a minimum set of tools and materials and options. There's also, if you have the ultimate version of PaintShop Pro, there's also this sea to sky workspace. Very handy if you're enhancing underwater or aerial photos. But in this demo, I'm going to be using the complete workspace, and I've also gone in and modified it to make it quicker and easier for me to use. I primarily use the edit option. Here you see PaintShop Pro 2023 Ultimate opened up in edit mode. For my purposes, to make life a little easier, I've created a customized workspace. So I'm going to go here and go to File, Workspace, and open up the Len workspace. And in my custom workspace, you see I've changed from that black background to a light gray. I capture a lot of images for desktop publication, and using that black background uses up too much ink. And for my 80-year-old eyes, this seems to work a little better. I've also customized the toolbar just to make what I'm about to do a little quicker and easier. There is a section of my tutorial, by the way, that deals with customizing the user interface for PaintShop. Well, I need to open an image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a PDF file, and I've created and made this available for free, a PDF file that has a bunch of sample images. And I have this PDF file open in Acrobat Reader right now. I'm going to page ahead here a little bit and choose one of these images. I'll left click to select that image. I was walking around the activity center one afternoon in the fall and here at Bristol Village, and I thought it was a nice scene looking out the window from the swimming pool area, so I snapped a picture. But we can make that look a little better. I'm going to right click on that in the PDF file. I'm going to select Copy Image. I'm going to go back to PaintShop Pro, and I could say Edit, Paste as New Image. However, I do this so often in the Customize toolbar, I've given myself a one-click option to do that. And I'm going to do that twice. The reason is that I want to preserve this original one so that we can compare it to what's going to happen next. Well, there's some perspective problem here. I wasn't looking straight on at these windows, and so there's some perspective issue, but let's deal with that. One of the tools is a perspective correction tool, and the way this works is I have to put these little corner grabbers at places that'll help me realign this to eliminate the perspective. And I think I'm pretty close here. So I think it could be just a little higher. Okay, now that I've set that tool, I'm going to go ahead and apply it. And then I'm going to use a cropping tool. And I'm going to go ahead and crop out the part of the image that I like. If I get right on this edge, I can drag that over. I get right on this grabber, I can grab that and drag it over. And I don't need this ceiling in my picture, so I'm going to get rid of that. A little bit less of the floor. And once I've set the cropping area, I will click on Apply. And there's my new image. So you see, we went from the original snapshot, changed to perspective or corrected to perspective, and did some cropping, and much better. By the way, I have a 3-button mouse, and I can use the mouse wheel here to zoom in and out on the image. I could also use the view tools. I find the mouse wheel a lot easier. Well, let's see what else we can do here. This is a nice fall day. I would like these fall leaves to stand out more. Wonder what would happen if I would use the one-step photo fix. Well, helps a little bit, but I really want to brighten up. I want those leaves to snap. So I'm going to go to Adjust, Hue and Saturation, and I'm going to choose the Vibrancy tool and previewing on the image. You can see I can adjust the strength of that from almost down to no color at all to way too much color. So you fool around with this until the result pleases you, and then you say, okay, much better, much better. But it would even look better if we had a frame around this picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the picture frame tool. By the way, if you hover on these tools, a little tip will pop out and tell you what the tool is for. But if your eyes are really wide, if you look way down here in the corner, you'll get more than a tip. You'll get an expanded tip. Add a picture frame to your image. So select the picture frame tool. Opens up the picture frame dialog box. And here I can select all different kinds of frames. If I select all of them, you see everything in the collection. This is because I downloaded that Ultimate Creative Collection option, and it filled this up with frames. Here's an ornate frame. I'm going to select that, and I can select this to frame inside of the image or outside of the image. If it was an unusual kind of picture frame, I may want to flip it left, right, or mirror it, or rotate it. But this one's pretty symmetrical, so we'll just go with this. We'll say OK. And now we have a picture suitable for hanging. And this is what we started with, remember? And without too much effort, you can bring that photo to a frameable photo, one for displaying on your gallery wall. I'm going to go back to the PDF file of my sample images, and I'm going to find another image to play with. So let's jump ahead to the last page. I'm going to select this windmill picture. I selected it, I right-click, I copy the image, I go back to PaintShop, paste as a new image, and paste it once more so I can have a before and after version. Okay, now you see that this picture actually taken at Schaansholm in the Netherlands, where they have on display a lot of old windmills that you can tour. Well, to backtrack several lifetimes ago, one time I went to a PSA judging event of Photographic Society of America, and they had judges, and as they displayed the pictures, the judges could be asked to comment. And one of the judges would look at this picture and he would immediately say, the water's running downhill, the water's running out of the picture, this is all wrong. Well, let's fix it. Let's go over here to the straighten tool. And we get this little horizontal line, and we're going to drag this until it lines up with the horizon. And once we've set that, we'll select Apply, and just like that, the picture is fixed. Okay, it's a little dim gray and not very nice. So let's see what the one-step photo fix tool will do. That helps quite a bit. I think this could use a little bit of that vibrancy trick. So let's try that. Adjust hue and saturation, vibrancy, and maybe a little too much there. Let's back off here a little bit. But it brings out the color of the jackets here a little bit. Let's do a little cropping and see if we can make this picture a little better. We'll select the cropping tool. And when you select the cropping tool, you should notice that there's a whole bunch of options here on the cropping tool. There's the apply option. There's actually crop as a new image. There's clear whatever cropping image is on there at a time. Here is a collection of composition aids. And many hundreds of years ago, artists developed this rule of thirds and also the golden spiral and also golden ratio. They had all these composition principles. In this example, let's choose the rule of thirds. And let's restrict this to a 16:9 aspect ratio. And so with a 16:9 aspect ratio selected, I can move this around. The rule of thirds composition says that horizons should appear on one of these horizontal lines. Also, points of interest should be at the intersection of these lines. Well, in this composition, we'll put the horizon line on the rule of thirds, and I'm going to say crop as a new image. And now we have the original image. Get off the crop tool so that isn't in the way. We have the original image, the modified image, and the cropped image. So again, with a little effort, you can see that we can improve this picture considerably. Let's take a look at this fall grass image. We'll copy that and we'll paste it as a new image in PaintShop, and we'll do it twice. Again, so we have the before and after. This image is kind of interesting. Nice fall day, pretty good sky. However, I think we can improve on this with some fancy cropping. Let's go back to the crop tool. And this time, you notice that it remembers the last crop you applied, and you can clear that off with this button. But this time on the cropping tool, let's go into the composition aids and let's look at the golden spiral. And now let's adjust this until we get the golden spiral ending up right about there at the vanishing point. The composition theory says that your eye should come into the picture and wander around and lead you right down into the depth of the picture. I think I could use a little more height on this. Actually, I'm going to pull down the sky so that I can get my end of the spiral closer to the vanishing point. Here we go. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to crop this as a new image. And there's my original before the crop. Here's the image after the crop. Now let's work on this a little bit. Let's try our old standby one-step photo fix. And let's do another thing. Oh, if I zoom in here, notice we've got a couple of things that, this is the mysteriously appearing stick syndrome. When you're taking this picture, you never see a stick like this, but it's obtrusive, invasive. Let's go in and let's choose a tool called Scratch Remover. And let's drag this tool. Notice that this tool is divided into 3 segments. There's a center area, and then there's an area on the left and an area on the right. What's going to happen is that when I release the left mouse button, the system's going to take the stuff in those 2 outside areas and mush it into the middle, and the scratch is gone. Let's try this one more time. We can get rid of this stick. Scratch is gone. Left a little bit of a smear because I had too much. Let me Control Z out of that. Be a little bit more careful with my scratch. Sometimes you have to do this multiple times. Again, if you look close, that kind of disturbed the shadow, didn't it? Can I fix this? If I go straight across this, now I didn't mess with the shadow. So you have to be very careful with the scratch tool about stuff in the area. Now, what are we going to do about this silly thing? We've got this, I think it's a telephone junction box or something. So here, this calls for a clone brush. The clone brush, well, that target area is much too big. I'm going to hold the Alt key down and drag my mouse until I get that target area a lot smaller. Now, the way this one works is when I right-click, I'll capture the area, and then when I drag, I drop that. Noticing that yellow area, I'm copying that and pasting it on top of this. And let me go in the other direction here. Right, I think I need it a little smaller again. And I'll zoom in on my picture so I can see what's going on here. Now I'm going to right click, I'm going to drag, click, 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 zoom back out. And now that telephone box is gone. What's left to do? Well, I suppose we could make this sky a little less of an Ohio sky and a little more of a Colorado sky. Do you think we can do that by increasing the vibrancy? And there we go. Now, if we wanted, we could get in here and use the clone brush and we could paint these cars out, but I'm going to leave this for now. What I am going to do is I'm going to put some kind of frame on this. So let's go to the frame tool. And this time, I'm going to select mats. And now what kind of mat would work with that? I think maybe, let's see what a parchment mat would do. Let's look at the others. Just a plain parchment. Okay. And there I go. I've matted the picture. Once again, I've taken this picture, which is fairly ordinary, nothing to write home about. I've applied the cropping tool, and I've used, in this case, I've used the golden spiral. and I've had that spiral into the vanishing point, and I cropped it as a new image and added a matte, and there we go. From here to here with hardly any time expired at all. Well, I'm back in my sample picture collection, and here's an old family snapshot. Let's work on this one a little bit. Copy the image, back to PaintShop, paste as a new image, and one for review. Now, this is an old snapshot. Looks like whoever's holding the camera wasn't on the level. So let's use our straighten tool and adjust this so people aren't leaning over quite so much. And do a simple crop. We'll clear off the existing crop. And, well, we don't really need the golden spiral on this one. Or golden ratio, well, none of that's too important with this kind of a plain shot here. Okay. And let's crop this as a new image again. And let's go work on this new image. Now, if you notice, the original picture, let's get out of the cropping tool. The original picture had a resolution of only 305 by 320 pixels. It was scanned from an old photograph from an album. We zoom in on this, you can see the pixelation here is pretty bad. Now let's go to our cropped version and let's increase the size of this. Now normally when you blow up a picture, when you enlarge a picture that has all these pixels, you'll enlarge the pixels. However, PaintShop has a magic trick. I'm going to click on the resize tool, and it now has some advanced and artificial intelligence settings. So let me go in and by print size, let me choose in inches, standard sizes. I'll make it let me make it a 3 by 5, well, 4 by 6 even. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And it's going to think about that. Not very long, but I messed with the aspect ratio. So undo. Let's go back to this resize tool. I don't want to mess with the aspect ratio. So instead of going by print size, I'm going to base this on one side. And I'm going to make it, instead of 241, I'm going to make it 600 pixels wide. And that'll be relative to this. So here we go. Well, before I go, this is photorealistic. Maybe throw in a little noise reduction. And it'll calculate that. The little green line there shows me, on the bottom of the screen, shows me the calculation. Now look what's happened. Now we have a 563 by 600 resolution image. If I zoom in, you can see quite a bit of difference between that one and the original. See, Sister Gloria's face is almost imperceptible, but with a new artificial intelligence enlargement applied, it's much better. Go back to the sample book. I'm going to work on this photograph here. This is actually scanned of an old Scandia, Pennsylvania class picture. Let's copy that and drop it into PaintShop as a new image. And as is my custom, I'm going to do it twice so we have a before and after. Well, we could do a little bit of fixing here. Let's see, there's not much perspective to correct in this one, just a little. So let's see what we can do here. Okay, except Let's do the crop. Clear off that crop. Let's crop it about like this. And crop it as a new image. And then our new image. Well, isn't that old? It looks old, doesn't it? Watch what happens if I apply this fade correction. This thing is faded a lot. Fade correction. Wow, isn't that nice? Of course, this is not a color picture, so I'm going to change the image to a grayscale image. And there's a lot more I can do with this, but just let's look at the adjusting brightness and contrast. I'm going to just, for sake of discussion, try this histogram adjustment. That brings up an interesting dialog box. And we're going to preview on the image. There are all kinds of little things we can mess with. Hey, that doesn't do a lot of good. You just have to experiment with these things. There's no rule I can give you on this one. Okay, there's this thing called gamma. We can shift it that way. We can shift it this way. We can make the brightness this way, or that way. And you just have to do this until you get something that pleases you, and then you say, okay. Now, one issue with this picture is that the girls here on the left side of the photo did not get the same amount of light as the guys on the right side of the photo. There's a little bit we can do with that, but I'm going to choose this selection tool here, and I'm going to choose the freehand selection. And I'm going to trace around these girls here that are kind of too bright, all the way over here, up here, around here, right maybe between these and there. Okay, you see the dashed line? That's what's currently selected. So anything I do now in this picture is only going to operate on the area that's selected over here. One of these tools is lighten and darken. And I'm going to hold the Alt key down, drag my mouse, and make that bigger. Now, if I left click, it gets lighter. If I right click, it gets darker. So I can go in here and I can try to mess with this until this side of the picture is a little closer to the other side of the picture. And then when I'm all done, I will say select none. And there's still things I could do up here. I could use my clone brush and I could clean this up so that line's not quite so obvious. I'm going to make the clone brush a little bigger for this. Right, oops. Click here, right there. Oh, I still have this selected. Unselect. Now. Whoops, I grabbed part of her head. Control Z, undo. Alt, smaller. Now, right click right there. Well, you see the game. You can have a lot of fun trying to clean these old pictures up, but you can take an old picture that's almost useless, and within just a few minutes, you can make it almost young again. Okay, it's quiz time. Remember way back at the beginning when we took this picture and we gave it a little more snap and a little more color to these leaves? Well, you remember how to do that? Well, let's find out. Let's select this picture, copy the image, pop it into PaintShop, And first thing we can try is see what the one-step photo fix does. Not so much. So what was the trick to make fall leaves pop? We went to adjust, hue and saturation, vibrancy, and then we ran this up till we got a really spectacular set of fall leaves. So, in a matter of just a few seconds, probably not even minutes, less than minutes, we can go from this blah picture to this snappy picture. Well, that was fun. So now I'm going to pause a little bit, and I'm going to save these. Okay, now that I've saved these in a special place, I'm going to clear off all the open files by using this Close All Image tool. If you don't have this as your customized, you can always go to Window, Close All. But I've customized my toolbar here. And I do want to close them because I've already saved them. And I'm going back to the book here. And now, let's see if we can improve on Grandma Nasman's old family picture. Right-click, copy the image, back to PaintShop, paste the image for before and after. Well, first thing we want to do on this is probably apply the fade correction. I'm going to apply the fade correction twice on this one. Okay. And let's turn it into a monochrome or grayscale image. And let's do adjust brightness and contrast. And could have her a little brighter. Could have a little more contrast. Oh, a little less brightness. Again, the trick here is just to experiment until you get it the way you like it. And if you're having trouble dragging these, you can precisely adjust them one digit at a time, or you can even type in numbers into these boxes. And then you get it there. Okay, let's frame her in some kind of frames, an antique vignette. Okay, and just like that, we've gone from this old thing, you can even see part of the scanner there, to this picture, and we could crop that and frame it. Well, let's do it just for the sake of discussion. Take a little time on this. We're going to crop her, cut out some of that extra white, and then we have to decide what kind of frame to use. About a thin black frame. Okay, and there we've gone from here to here. Did you time it? How long that took? Hardly any time at all to repair an old picture. Well, let's do a little work on this picture of Grandma Lowell. Let's copy her into PaintShop. And let's try the one-step fix. Oh, I don't like it. Control Z. Actually, the one step didn't turn me on much, but even though this picture is not exactly faded, the fade correction really does nice things to this. A little too much correction, though. Notice in this kind of dialog box, when you have a number here, you can actually click and drag one way or the other way, and give yourself a quick view of what the extremes are like, and then you can just go a little bit at a time. Well, I think I like that for starters, so okay. Now, this is kind of a portrait, and there's a whole new collection of things to do with portraits in PaintShop Pro, starting with 2022, continuing in 2023. I'm going to say adjust artificial intelligence, and I can either go to portrait mode or background replacement. Portrait mode will allow me to take and fuzz out or make fuzzy the areas outside the portrait. So if you have someone standing in front of a building and the buildings are too much in focus, you can use a portrait mode and throw the buildings out of focus and keeping your subject in focus. You can also do the background replacement. So let's experiment with that. Now, PaintShop does a little thinking with its artificial intelligence, and it tries to figure out what we really want here. And what it's done is it's tried to guess what the background is. All the stuff that's red, PaintShop thinks is background, and all the stuff that's not red is not selected. I have this little tool. If I click and drag, I can uncolor the red. I'm going to right click and change it from positive to negative. Anyway, I can change it to red here. I can select this as part of the background. And there's a zoom tool here. You can zoom in and out for close work. And there's a little bit up here, I noticed. Okay, once you've done the selection, once you've turned everything red that you want to be in the background, then you have some choices here. You can preview this as a transparent image. Okay. You can also adjust things like brush size when you're messing with this, and smooth and feather and border width and things for you to experiment with. I'm going to go to the next button, and now you have choices. You can choose any one of these stock backgrounds, or if you have created your own files, you can use those as backgrounds. Up against the wall, Grandma. How about a little more pleasant wall? How about no wall at all? Here's where we can do a custom browse for a background. Here we can use a transparent background. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to say I'm done. Now what PaintShop has done is it's created two layers. It has the original layer and it has this raster layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to delete that original layer, and it leaves me with this raster layer. Now, the interesting thing about that is this is all transparent, but it's all selected. And I can use the flood fill tool now. And if I wanted to flood fill with just a solid color, let's see, I could take a solid color like that and flood fill just like that. Control Z. I could also select a gradient. And there are all these different gradients. There are these duotones. Once I've selected a gradient, I can change the gradient angle, or I can change the style from rectangular to, what's this called, sunburst. I could move the center of that, and I could adjust and make custom gradients. Let's just see what this one looks like. Not bad, not bad. So actually, there's a lot of things you can do, and this artificial intelligence helping you to get rid of the background is very useful. Let's do one other thing while I'm at it. I have an alternative to gradients here. Let's go to patterns. And there's a whole collection of patterns, and we can sort them out by animal prints, line art, nature, patterns. We can sort through this. Maybe maybe there was some wallpaper in the room where Grandma was sitting. Let's pretend there was wallpaper behind her. And I'm going to scale this wallpaper down to about half of what it is. And I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to flood fill with it, just like that. So there are endless possibilities, but you can take something that was not very nice because of all this junk that was around there and all this distraction, and with a few clicks, you can clean it up and customize it no end. Well, here's a very old scanned photo. I don't know if you can even tell there's anything to this. Let's see what we can do with it. Well, now that we have it up in PaintShop, we can almost see what's going on. What happens if we do the old fade correction? Okay. Fade correction more, fade correction less, fade correction average. We can help it some. Well, we know there are people there anyway. I think we'll go right to grayscale here. And we'll do the brightness and contrast thing. And by carefully messing with these adjustments, you can bring that picture back to something that's actually visible. Here I've gone to the histogram adjustment just to see what's going on here. So there's lots you can do with a picture like this. However, you can see that it's possible to resurrect a picture that you can barely make out and turn it into something that at least you get an idea what was going on with Grandma Lolner's brothers pretending they were sword fighting. Let's do a little experimenting with this old family photo. I'll copy that, bring it into PaintShop, paste it down a couple of times, one to preserve how it was before and after. This image needs to be rotated, no problem with PaintShop. We'll just select the rotate left tool and it's rotated. Now this is an old picture taken in the early 1900s back in Sundsvall, Sweden, and it's been banging around in different photo albums for more than 100 years now, so it's really picked up a lot of damage. This is a challenge. Let's start by trying to see what happens with our artificial intelligence background replacement tool. And the system finds quite a lot that it thinks is a background, maybe finds a little too much. Maybe we don't want to remove this chair. So we'll click here. Now, when I'm using this tool, I can flip between including and excluding by pressing the right mouse button. Press the right mouse button. I take some things out of the removal selection. And if I right click again, I can add things to the removal selection just by painting over them. Once we have the background selected that we like, We'll go ahead and click Next. And then we can choose between transparent, or we can download and install our own background, or we can use some of the stock backgrounds that are provided. In this case, I'll use transparent. And I'm going to say done. And once again, this gives me the original background on a layer and a raster version that has a transparent background. I'm going to right click on this original layer and delete it. Don't need it anymore for this operation. And on this raster area, I'll go ahead and I'll use the cropping tool. And let's see what I'd want to do here. Oh, something like that. Say apply. And now we have a lot of work that we would need to do. Let me zoom in here quite a bit. I'll zoom in on Anselmo's face. We could use our clone tool and our scratch removal tool to go in and one by one get rid of these things. So let's try the scratch remover. Remember how that works. When we draw a line, there's a three-part section here. The outer sections of that line will be dragged in and cover up the center section. And we can use that scratch removal tool even on little spots. We can also use the clone tool to get in here and clean some of this up. But you can go around and around, and eventually you can clean up a lot of this noise. There's another tool that's worth noting here. There's a tool called Makeover. The Makeover tool works a lot like the scratch remover, except instead of having a line with the outside areas mushing in, we have a circle. And so when we click on this, it's going to replace what's in the center of the circle with the material that it finds on the outside edge. And we can use that to get rid of these little spots. And again, if I hold the Alt key down, I can make this bigger and smaller. Not going to be perfect, but it's going to help. By applying the different tools, the combination of the Makeover tool, the clone brush, and the scratch remover, with a lot of time, we can go in here and we can clean things up on this old damaged photo. Suppose that I want to have a portrait of Grandpa Nasman without these other people involved. I'm going to use the freehand selection tool, and I'm going to try to be careful with my mouse here, and I'm going to lasso Grandpa Nasman. And when I release the mouse, it'll close the loop. Now I have a new selection. I'm going to copy that selection, and to do it, I could use Edit Copy, or I could remember the shortcut. If you click on Edit, you'll see that the shortcut for copy is Control-C. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to Control-C, and then I'm going to paste that copy as a new selection. And now I have something I can work on here. I want to clean this up a little bit. One thing I can do to get rid of those bad edges is I have a tool here called Background Eraser. And again, the Alt drag will change the size of that. And now I can go in here, and I don't erase too much. Let's make it smaller. I think I want to back off here and be very careful. Get a little more of this background. Probably should zoom way in so that I can get right into that. And you can see with a lot of work, you can go in here and clean this up. Let's just fix this part around his head here a little bit right there. Well, you have to be very patient and do a lot of fine, careful brush work here. Well, you get the idea. What about these fingers that we don't need? Well, let's use our old friend, the clone tool. Capture some of the jacket here. We need to use our background eraser and clean this up a little more. Well, I'm sure that you're getting bored, but you understand the process here, right? Once we've done all of this, cleaned up the isolated version of Grandpa, and patiently gone in and zoomed, we can turn this into a classic portrait. While you weren't looking, I went in and did a lot more cleaning on this because it takes some time, and I didn't want to take all the time on the video. And I added a frame, and I made a portrait from that old picture of Grandpa Nasman. By now you should have some idea of how easy we can use PaintShop Pro to go in, copy images, paste them into PaintShop, use our various tools so that we can straighten things out, do a little bit of cropping, maybe do some fade removal or fade correction. And since this was an old black and white photo, let's just change it to a grayscale photo. And we can go in and adjust the brightness and contrast. Until we get something that we think is an improvement. So in just a matter of a couple of minutes, we can take an old photo, straighten it up, clean it up, and turn it into something that we can hang on the refrigerator or replace in the photo album. Let's take a quick look back at what we've been able to do with PaintShop Pro in just a few minutes of effort. I'm in the PaintShop Pro Manage option, and I'm going to view in full screen preview a series of the pictures that we've worked on. Remember the old swimming pool picture? How about the water running downhill? And using one of the standard composition tools. Restoring an old photo and increasing its resolution. Here's one that was a real challenge. Well, not so much with PaintShop Pro. And we can add punch to our fall tree scenes. And recover Grandma Nasman and Grandma Lowell. And even make some things invisible a little more visible. And we can take old beat up photos that are more than 100 years old and clean them up or turn them into portraits. Let's back up here a step. In this Manage Viewer, I could click here to make that image fit the window, even though it's only 400 by 464. Well, I hope that this has provided you with an idea of some of the possibilities you have for enhancing your photos and pictures using PaintShop Pro. But wait, there's even more. If you enter into your web browser, Learn at Len Nasman, you can find my web page where I've collected links to a number of tutorial books and videos that I've prepared. In particular, there's a section on PaintShop Pro 2022, and that will soon be updated to PaintShop Pro 2023. There you can find a link to the free sample image book, and you can also, shameless commercial message coming, you can also find a link to purchasing from Amazon my PaintShop Pro Fundamentals book. And correlated with that book is a series of videos that go through in more detail than you've seen here the processes of modifying photos, enhancing photos, and quite a bit of information on how you can use PaintShop to do basic drawing, how you could use it to do printing, and there's a special section on how to customize the user interface. If any of you are interested in learning how to do word processing using the computer, I have a set of word processing books and videos. This one is designed particularly for seniors, not because there's anything special about the content, but because I've used a large font. For folks that are my age, reading fine print is a little bit difficult. Anyway, this book is not only good for seniors, it's good for high school seniors and maybe even down to junior high school students. The fundamentals of word processing are the same. This book uses the free LibreOffice Writer software. There's a book available and a correlated collection of videos that go through step by step the processes of creating everything from a basic document to stories to family history, newsletters, greeting cards, and more. I hope you found this video interesting and amusing, and I hope that it stimulates you to get out there and use PaintShop Pro to enhance your photographs.